My name is Santiago Rodriguez Jr. I was born April 14, 1924. I'm 86 years old, and I'd like to portray with you in the history class my adventures in the U.S. Navy. I enlisted in the Navy in September of 1941. Little did I know that this country would be going to war a few months later in December. This is a picture of me when I was 17, when I enlisted into the Navy. I did my boot camp in Norfolk, Virginia. I was assigned to the USS aircraft carrier United States ship Hornet, V8. We put her into commission October 26, 1941. In December, I got my first leave and I went to New York City, where I was born, to visit with my parents. During that time, it was on a Sunday that we were celebrating my sister's birthday, which fell on December 7th, when the news of Pearl Harbor came over the radio.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Stay tuned to WOR for further development.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
All Navy and military personnel were ordered to report back to their bases. So naturally, I had to return back to my ship. When I went down the street to call to make my reservations on the train, I remember a police officer hailing me and asking me if I had heard the news of the attack on Pearl Harbor. I said, yes, I did, sir. And I told him that I was making preparations to leave town to report back to my ship. I did so, and at the same time, we were arming our carrier, which was not fully armed at the time. And when we got all settled, we departed Virginia and went through a shakedown cruise and came back to Norfolk. Then we were assigned to the 7th Fleet, which was in the South Pacific. So we had to go through the Panama Canal to get to our base in San Diego. At the time, President Roosevelt and all the Army and Navy personnel, intelligence and all that, were getting together a planned raid on Tokyo. The USS Hornet was commissioned and assigned to carry on that mission. General Doolittle and his B-17 bombers were loaded onto the USS Hornet after they were stripped of all their excessive baggage because it was impossible for them to take off with too great a load. We flew across the Pacific, and Doolittle and his men took off for the raid on Japan. That was considered a one-way mission because there was no way that those planes could come back and land on the Hornet. They were much too big. They could only take off, not land. When we returned after the Doolittle raid, we returned to Pearl Harbor, which became our home base, and that's where we operated out of. My duties on the ship was as a steward's mate. My duties as a steward mate was more or less officer's steward. We were only making $21 a month. That included Navy, Army, Marines. That was our base pay at that time. We always had somebody down in my locker room hustling for a few coins, as well as myself. I used to pay a fellow down in my locker room 25 cents to shine my shoes. 25 cents was a lot of money in those days. As I said, we only made $21 a month. And this one particular day, this one officer asked me that he had left 3 pairs of shoes in front of his stateroom, and hadn't I seen them? My answer to him was, yes, sir. I saw your shoes outside the stateroom. Why do you think I left them there? He says to me. Well, like I said, I'm very naive. I said, I don't know, sir. I thought maybe you left them out there to wear. Don't get smart with me, he says to me. He says, you know why I left them there? I said, no, sir, I don't know why you left them there. I'm acting stupid, you know? He says, I left them there for you to shine. My answer to him was, sir, I pay a man in my compartment 25 cents to shine my shoes. I don't shine my own shoes, sir. And I sure as hell ain't not going to shine yours. So that made me a bad guy. So they put me on report. My division officer's name was Mr. Quackenbush. And as I said, my name was Rodriguez. Mr. Quackenbush used to call me Rodriguez. So the following day, Mr. Quackenbush confronts me. Rodriguez, Lieutenant so-and-so put you on report because you didn't want to shine his shoes. My answer to Mr. Quackenbush was, Mr. Quackenbush, I don't shine my own shoes. I won't shine your shoes, and I won't shine this captain's shoes. I didn't come into this Navy to shine shoes. When we were out at sea, we had 3 squadrons. We had a fighter squadron, a bomber squadron, and a torpedo squadron. We had several engagements where we would go into general quarters, and our planes would take off to attack the Japanese fleet wherever we encountered them. We were lucky, and our planes would come back safely, land on the ship, and then we would disappear. And they called us, the Japanese used to call us the Fighting Lady. And we were hit and run, hit and run. We were at the Battle of Midway, which was one of our greatest and most memorable ones. And then
at the Battle of Santa Cruz, where we encountered also the Japanese Navy, and that was in October 26, 1942, a year and 6 days after the ship was commissioned. My battle station at the time was on the 5th deck in the starboard armor room. We called them the magazines. We had a forward, starboard, and port magazine. We had a aft, starboard, and port magazine. Mine was in the starboard forward magazine. My job down there was to receive the shells and the bombs and put them into a hoist and send them topside. These were 5-inch shells. When we arrived at Santa Cruz, about 15 minutes later, our ship rocked. We were hit by a torpedo. That was our first sense that we were really in a war. When that torpedo hit, that ship rocked like a rocking chair. And the master at arms that was in charge down there was a young fellow. And as the torpedo hit, the ship went into darkness. And the torpedo hit midship, and it stopped the Hornet dead in its track. We tried to operate the hoist manually, and it didn't work. And we found that we were down in that magazine, unable to deliver any ammunition topside. The master at arms asked what we should do. And I took it upon myself to tell him we had to get out of there because we couldn't do anything. So we opened the hatches and started topside. I was able to open the hatch on the 4th deck from below. As I approached the 3rd deck, that hatch had to be opened from topside. We had a damage control crew up there that was supposed to tend to that hatch. They had abandoned their station, and we couldn't get out. I had to bang with my fist on the hatch until some soul came by and heard us and opened the hatch, and we were able to get out of there. There was a total of about 40 men down there, and we all got out of there safely. And we were told to go up to the forecastle. Now we had no assignment. We were just there. After the first wave of Japanese planes striking the Hornet, which included a bomb on the flight deck, now our planes were unable to come back to land on the Hornet because we were damaged. So when the first wave of planes left, they went back to report back to their carrier. So when that happened, the Navy tried to put out a tow line on the Hornet to try to tow us back. As we set up the tow line, our sister ship, the Enterprise, is still sending out her planes. And what happened, that tow line stopped. As we were setting up the second tow line, the second wave of Japanese planes that had gone back to their carrier and reloaded came to attack us again. All these attacks on the Hornet were kamikazes. They were ready to die for the Emperor, and they did. When they came back, we had to drop that tow line, and the ships had to go around and circle the carrier and try to protect her best they could and defend themselves. And that's when the second torpedo hit starboard side. Also a suicide by kamikaze. We took a few more bomb hits topside, which were all kamikaze. Now the Hornet was listing at about a 30 degree angle because she was severely damaged. That wave lasted about maybe 20 minutes, seemed like hours, and they left after they had unloaded all their bombs or whatever, and they returned back to their carrier. So we tried to put up another tow line to one of our ships. This time we got a little pull and then we got a little engine going. And just when we started towing, here come the third wave of Japanese fighters and bombers again, torpedoed them. And they hit us again for the third time. Also, on the starboard side, for the third torpedo. That was three torpedoes in the same side, on the starboard. Now the ship was taking a considerable list because it had been listing about 45 degrees. She was no longer operable. And at the time, our planes from my sister ship, the Enterprise, and the Wasp, were attacking the Japanese Navy, and we had sunk about 3 of their carriers, or scuttled them very badly, and put them out of commission. Plus some of the other ships, and the only one of us that got hit was the Hornet. Now, we had no choice, or the captain had no choice, and the admiral in charge, as to order us to abandon ship. All crew was told to go down on the port side, because the ship was leaning too much on the starboard, and you never go off on the leaning side. We abandoned ship and started swimming towards destroyers and other ships that were circling around to pick up survivors. I, for one, as I swam to one of the ships, took off my shoes because they were kind of saddling me from my swim. And I did one stupid thing also. I took off my life preserver because it was bothering me with my stroke. Finally, I managed to reach one of the destroyers and grab onto the netting that they had thrown out for us to grab on a hold to. And a couple of the sailors on the ship managed to grab my arm and pull me aboard ship. I was exhausted. Had I had to go another 15 yards or so, I guess I would have drowned. After they picked up all survivors, and everybody had gotten off the ship safely, one of our destroyers, I don't recall which one, was ordered to sink the Hornet to make sure that the Japanese could never scuttle it. And that we did. The Hornet took another 3 fish, torpedoes, from one of our destroyers and sunk it. And then all survivors, then the whole fleet left, and our nearest port was Noumea, New Caledonia. It took us 3 days to get to Noumea, New Caledonia. And that was the rockiest ride I ever had. I had never been seasick before in my life, but I was sick as a dog those 3 days. I'll never forget that. And anybody that says they were seasick, I know what they went through. We had a crew of approximately 3,500, of which we lost close to 400 men. The rest of us survived. I was one of the survivors. And at that time, I was 18 years old. We sailed towards New Caledonia. It took us 3 days to get there after our attack. And they set up what they call a tent city. And it was all mud during the rain, and it was devastating. It was a harsh living there because you didn't have too many utilities. We didn't have showers. We didn't have regular shower facilities, nothing like that. It took a few months to set up everything until we were able to eat a decent meal and get ourselves all cleaned up and squared away a little bit. And then I was promoted to cook. So I became an officer's cook. I was in Noumea, New Caledonia for a year before they finally sent me back stateside. So anytime you come back to the States and you've survived a sinking, you're allowed a 30-day furlough. That's what they call a survivor's leave. So I came home for 30 days, back to New York City. After that, I had to report back to San Francisco, to Treasure Island, which was in the middle of the bay there in San Francisco. And I was stationed there for about a year. And then I was assigned to several ships. One being the last one that I was on when the war was over, that was the USS Monterey, and that was a converted carrier. Those were carriers that were converted from heavy cruisers. They put a flat top on them and made them aircraft carriers. So that one continued on with the 7th Fleet. And we were on that carrier as the Americans were dropping their bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When the atomic bomb was thrown on Japan, that the Japanese decided to surrender, we pulled into Tokyo Bay, and I managed to see the devastation that the atomic bomb had done. It was a horrible sight. All you could see maybe was one strip tree standing and nothing but desolation.
The Japanese offer of unconditional surrender is official. It has been accepted. President Truman said this: I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by Secretary of State Burns on August 11th. I deem this reply, the President told us, a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
Spontaneous celebrations erupted from coast to coast.
There's nothing but excitement and love of the movement in the air.
And then, after the treaty was signed, that the Japanese surrendered, all ships were ordered back home. That evening, before that, as we travel at night during the war period, all ships travel in darkness. We did so to avoid Japanese submarines. But that day after the treaty, when we left for sea, as night fell, all these ships were lit up like Christmas trees. It was a sight to see. As we headed back towards Pearl Harbor, after the treaty was signed, I again saw the devastation that the Japanese had left us with that December 7th. And it was really a sore sight to see. And as I mentioned before, if it hadn't been for our courageous young men, including myself, that went out and fought that war, and the people in America that did their part, building ships to send out there to help us with, we probably would have been flying a different flag. Thank God that it all happened in our favor. After we went Pearl Harbor, we came back. The ship came back to the United States. We went through the Panama Canal, and we were ordered to come back to Navy base in Brooklyn, New York, where in that month of December, I was discharged. Now, my experience in this war, what I've seen in this war, was, like I said, very devastating. I would also like to say that my father was a veteran of World War I, and I, a veteran of World War II. I had some uncles that were stationed in Germany during World War II. And when you speak of wars, to speak of death, because many people die in wars. And I worried when I came home, after I got married, I worried about my children, that they should never go to war. I worry about all people's children that should never go to war. War is a terrible, terrible thing. I'm very proud of having served for my country. Sorry for those shipmates that we lost, and hope that none of you ever have to go to war, because war is a very terrible thing. And God bless you all, and may you live long, long lives.